The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Kalabad, a small city that had once been peaceful. Children used to play in these streets. Mothers would walk to the market without fear. Fathers would sit outside cafes drinking tea and talking about their day. But those days were gone. For 3 months now, the city lived in terror. An unknown group of snipers had taken control of the high buildings and rooftops. They shot anyone who dared to walk in the open. No one knew who they were or what they wanted. They just killed day after day without mercy. Maria Santos had arrived in the city just 2 weeks ago. She was a military contractor hired by the local government to help train their security forces. At 32 years old, she had spent 12 years in various military operations around the world. She had seen war, she had seen death, but she had never seen anything quite like this. The snipers were smart. They changed positions constantly. They never stayed in one place for more than a few hours. They used different routes to move around the city. They had studied the area well and knew every building, every alley, every possible escape route. Maria sat in the command center studying maps and reports. The local commander, Captain Ahmed Hassan, looked tired and defeated. His men were scared. In 3 months, they had lost 15 soldiers trying to hunt down the snipers. The enemy remained invisible, striking from the shadows and disappearing like ghosts. "We have tried everything," Captain Hassan told Maria. "We sent teams to search buildings. They were shot before they could even get close. We tried to surround areas where we thought the snipers might be hiding. They always escaped. We brought in helicopters. They shot at the helicopters and forced them to retreat." Maria nodded, listening carefully. She had read all the reports before coming here. The situation was indeed difficult, but she had faced difficult situations before. "Tell me about their patterns," she said. "When do they shoot? Where do they shoot from? How do they move?" Captain Hassan spread out a map on the table. Red marks showed where attacks had happened. "They are most active in the morning and late afternoon. They avoid shooting at night because they know we have night vision equipment. They prefer tall buildings with good views of the main streets. But they never use the same building twice in 1 week." Maria studied the map carefully. There were patterns here, even if they weren't obvious at first glance. The snipers were disciplined and organized. This wasn't random violence. They had a plan. "How many do you think there are?" Maria asked. "Our best estimate is between 6 and 8. Maybe more. They work in pairs most of the time. One shooter, one spotter. Sometimes we hear shots from different parts of the city at the same time, so we know there are multiple teams." Maria walked to the window and looked out at the empty streets below. A few cars moved quickly from one building to another, but mostly the streets were deserted. The city was dying of fear. She had grown up in a small town in Texas, where her father had taught her to shoot when she was 8 years old. By the time she was 16, she could hit a target at 800 meters with iron sights. When she joined the army at 18, her instructors were amazed by her natural ability. But Maria was more than just a good shot. She was smart, patient, and methodical. She studied her enemies carefully. She learned their habits, their weaknesses, their fears. And then she used that knowledge against them. "I need to see the city myself," Maria told Captain Hassan. "I need to understand how they think, how they move." Captain Hassan looked worried. "It's too dangerous. They will shoot you the moment you step outside." Maria smiled. "Not if they don't see me." That night, Maria prepared her equipment carefully. She had brought her own rifle, a custom-built weapon that she had used for 7 years. She knew every part of it, every adjustment, every detail. She also had specialized camouflage clothing, night vision equipment, and communication devices. But most importantly, she had a plan. The next morning, before dawn, Maria left the command center through a back exit. She moved carefully through the narrow alleys, staying in the shadows. She had studied satellite photos of the city for hours, memorizing every street, every building, every possible route. Her first destination was a building that the snipers had used 3 days ago. Captain Hassan's men had searched it afterward but found nothing useful. Maria wanted to see it for herself. The building was 5 stories tall with a flat roof and several windows facing the main street. Maria climbed the stairs quietly, checking each floor carefully. On the 4th floor, She found what she was looking for. In a corner room with a window facing southeast, there were small marks on the floor. Someone had been lying here for several hours. There were impressions in the dust where a rifle had rested. There were also small pieces of food wrapper and a water bottle that had been forgotten. But Maria noticed something else. On the windowsill, there were tiny scratches in the paint. Someone had been using this window regularly, marking distances and wind directions. This wasn't random. The snipers had prepared this position carefully. She took photographs of everything and made detailed notes. Then she moved to the roof. From the roof, she could see most of the city center. It was an excellent position for a sniper. But as Maria looked around, she noticed something interesting. There were other buildings nearby that offered equally good views, buildings that were taller and offered better escape routes. Why had the snipers chosen this particular building? The answer came to her as she studied the surrounding area. This building was connected to others through a series of rooftops and fire escapes. A sniper could shoot from here and then escape quickly through the connected buildings without ever going down to street level. Maria spent the next 2 hours mapping out the entire network of connected buildings. It was like a hidden highway that ran above the city, invisible to people on the ground. By noon, she had visited 3 more sniper positions. Each one told a story. The snipers were not just random killers, they were professionals. They planned their attacks carefully. They prepared multiple escape routes. They worked as a team. But professionals had weaknesses too. They followed patterns, they had habits. And habits could be exploited. Maria returned to the command center with new understanding. She spread out her maps and photographs on the table and called Captain Hassan and his senior officers. The snipers are using the rooftops to move around the city, she explained. They've created a network of connected buildings that allows them to travel from one side of the city center to the other without ever touching the ground. She pointed to the map, showing the routes she had discovered. This explains how they can appear in one location, take a shot, and then disappear so quickly. They're not escaping through the streets, they're escaping through the sky. Captain Hassan studied the map with interest. This is valuable information. But how does it help us catch them? Maria smiled. Because now we know where they'll be, and more importantly, we know where they won't be. She had identified 12 buildings that were part of the rooftop network. 6 of them offered excellent shooting positions. The snipers had already used 4 of these positions. That left 2 buildings they hadn't used yet. They'll use one of these 2 buildings for their next attack, Maria said, pointing to the map. Probably this one because it offers the best view of the government building, and tomorrow is when the mayor is supposed to give his speech. Captain Hassan looked skeptical. How can you be so sure? Because that's what I would do, Maria replied. The mayor's speech is the biggest target they've had in months. They won't miss this opportunity. Maria spent the rest of the day preparing her counterattack. She positioned herself in a building across the street from where she expected the snipers to appear. She had a clear view of both possible positions. Her rifle was zeroed perfectly, and she had calculated wind speed and distance. But she knew that shooting the snipers wouldn't be enough. She needed to capture at least one of them alive to find out who they were working for and where the others were hiding. As the sun began to set, Maria settled into position. She had been lying motionless for 3 hours, watching and waiting. Her patience had been tested many times over the years, but she had learned that patience was often the difference between success and failure. At 6:47 p.m., she saw movement in the window of the target building. A figure appeared briefly, then disappeared. Maria adjusted her scope and waited. 15 minutes later, the figure appeared again. This time, Maria could see clearly. It was a man in military-style clothing, carrying a high-powered rifle. He was setting up his position, preparing to take a shot at someone on the street below. Maria had a clear shot. She could end this man's life with a single bullet. But instead, she waited. She watched as the sniper prepared his weapon and aimed at his target. She could see another figure moving in the room behind him, the spotter. 2 men, just as Captain Hassan had predicted. The sniper was about to pull his trigger when Maria made her move. She shifted her rifle slightly and fired a single shot. The bullet struck the sniper's rifle, destroying it and sending metal fragments flying. The man threw himself backward, shouting in pain and surprise. His partner rushed to help him. Maria was already moving. She had planned this moment carefully. While the snipers were confused and distracted, she was running through the building, taking the stairs 3 at a time. She burst through the door of their room just as they were trying to escape through a window that led to the rooftop network. "Stop!" she shouted, pointing her pistol at them. The 2 men froze. They were both in their 30s, well-trained, and clearly experienced soldiers, but they had been caught completely off guard. "Who sent you?" Maria demanded. The men looked at each other but said nothing. Maria stepped closer. "You have 30 seconds to answer me before my backup arrives, and this becomes much more complicated." One of the men, the one whose rifle had been destroyed, spoke first. "We don't know who hired us. We receive instructions through encrypted messages. We never meet our employers face to face." "Where are the others?" Maria asked. "There are 6 more," the man replied. "They're spread across the city, but we only know the locations of our own team. The others operate independently." Maria heard footsteps on the stairs below. Captain Hassan and his men were arriving. "You're going to help me find them," Maria told the prisoners. "Because if you don't, this city will never be safe, and you'll spend the rest of your lives in prison." The 2 men looked defeated. They had been captured by someone they had never seen coming, someone who had outsmarted them at their own game. As Captain Hassan's men took the prisoners away, Maria stood at the window looking out at the city. She had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. 6 more snipers were still out there, still killing innocent people. But now she had valuable information. She knew how they operated. She knew their methods. And she had 2 prisoners who could provide more details. The next phase of her mission would be even more dangerous. The remaining snipers would know that their teammates had been captured. They would change their tactics. They would be more careful, more suspicious. But Maria was ready for them. She had spent 12 years learning how to hunt the most dangerous people in the world. These snipers were skilled, but they had made one critical mistake. They had let her get close enough to study them. And once Maria Santos studied an enemy, their fate was sealed. The interrogation room was small and windowless. Maria sat across from the 2 captured snipers, a recording device between them on the metal table. Captain Hassan stood in the corner, arms folded, watching carefully. The wounded sniper, who had given his name as Victor, held his bandaged hand against his chest. Metal fragments from his destroyed rifle had cut his fingers badly. His partner, who called himself Alexei, sat silently beside him. "Let's start simple," Maria said. "How long have you been operating in this city?" Victor looked at Alexei, who nodded slightly. 4 months. We arrived 1 month before the attacks began. And in those 4 months, how many people have you killed?" Victor's face showed no emotion. "I don't count." Maria leaned forward. "I do. According to our records, your group has killed 47 civilians and 15 soldiers, 47 people who were just trying to live their lives. We follow orders." Alexei spoke for the first time. His English was heavily accented. "We are soldiers. Soldiers follow orders." "Soldiers have names, ranks, and commanders," Maria replied. "What army are you from?" The 2 men exchanged another look. Victor shook his head slightly. Maria changed her approach. "Tell me about the encrypted messages. How do you receive them?" "Secure phone," Victor said reluctantly. "Messages come every few days. Sometimes they tell us targets. Sometimes they tell us to wait. Show me the phone." Victor hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black device. Maria took it and examined it carefully. It was a basic model, but she could see it had been modified with additional encryption hardware. "When did you last receive a message?" she asked. 2 days ago, Victor replied. It said to prepare for a special target, high value. More details would come. Maria felt a chill. "What kind of special target?" "We don't know. The message didn't say. But when they say special target, it usually means someone important. Government official, military commander, maybe foreign diplomat." Captain Hassan stepped forward. "The regional governor is visiting next week. He's scheduled to meet with the mayor and inspect our security operations." Maria nodded grimly. The snipers' employers, whoever they were, had been planning something big. The capture of 2 team members might have disrupted their plans, but it wouldn't stop them entirely. I need you to send a message to your handlers, Maria told Victor. Tell them that you and Alexei are in position for the special target. Ask for more details. Victor shook his head. They will know something is wrong. We have specific protocols for communication. If I say the wrong thing, they will know we've been compromised. Then you'll say the right thing, Maria replied. Because if you don't, 6 more people are going to die, along with everyone they kill in the meantime. She leaned back in her chair, studying the 2 men. They were professionals, but they were also scared. Being captured had shaken them more than they wanted to admit. Let me explain your situation, Maria said calmly. Right now, you're facing charges for 47 counts of murder. In this country, that means you'll either get life in prison or death penalty. Your only chance of getting a lighter sentence is to cooperate. Victor and Alexei whispered to each other in what sounded like Russian. After a few minutes, Victor looked up. If we help you, what do we get? That depends on how much you help, Maria replied. Full cooperation might get you transferred to a prison in your home country instead of staying here. Victor nodded slowly. Okay, I will send the message. But you need to understand, these people we work for, they are very dangerous. If they find out we betrayed them, they won't, Maria said confidently. Because we're going to catch them first. An hour later, Maria watched as Victor typed a carefully worded message into the encrypted phone. The message asked for more details about the special target and confirmed that his team was ready to proceed. The response came within 30 minutes. Maria read it over Victor's shoulder, feeling her anger rise with each word. Regional governor arrives Tuesday 10 a.m. at City Hall. Primary target for elimination. Secondary targets: mayor, security chief, foreign advisors. Maximum casualties preferred. Payment bonus for successful completion. Maria looked at Captain Hassan. They're planning a massacre. We have to cancel the governor's visit, Captain Hassan said immediately. No, Maria replied. That just delays the problem. These people will find another target, another opportunity. We need to end this now. She studied the message again. The snipers were planning to hit multiple targets simultaneously. That meant they would need to position themselves in several different locations around City Hall. And that gave Maria an opportunity. Victor, how do the teams coordinate during an operation like this? Radio communication. Short range, encrypted frequencies. Each team has a designated position and target. We synchronize our shots to maximize impact. Maria nodded. She was beginning to form a plan, but it would be extremely dangerous. She would need perfect timing, excellent intelligence, and a considerable amount of luck. I need you to contact your team leaders, she told Victor. Tell them you've scouted the City Hall area and recommend specific positions for the attack. Victor looked confused. Why would I do that? Because you're going to recommend positions that give us the best chance to catch them. Over the next 2 hours, Maria worked with Victor and Alexei to plan what would appear to be a perfect sniper attack on the governor's visit. Using detailed maps and photographs, she identified 6 buildings around City Hall that offered excellent shooting positions. But Maria had a special requirement. Each position needed to have limited escape routes. She wanted the snipers to feel confident in their positions while actually walking into carefully prepared traps. This building here, Maria pointed to a 4-story office building on the east side of City Hall. Good view of the main entrance, but only 1 stairway down. If we block the stairway, the sniper is trapped on the roof. Victor nodded reluctantly. Yes, my team leader would choose this position, but the others might pick different buildings. That's okay, Maria replied. We just need them to pick buildings where we can control their escape routes. Captain Hassan was looking increasingly nervous. Maria, this plan requires us to let armed snipers get into position around our most important government building. If something goes wrong, if we don't do this, they'll just attack somewhere else when we're not ready. Maria interrupted. Right now, we have advance warning and inside information. We may never get another chance like this. Maria spent the rest of the evening preparing her equipment and briefing Captain Hassan's men. She would need to coordinate a simultaneous assault on multiple positions. Each team would need to move at exactly the right moment to prevent the snipers from escaping or harming civilians. But the most dangerous job would be hers. She planned to take on the team leaders personally, the two most experienced and deadly snipers in the group. According to Victor and Alexei, the team leaders were brothers named Dmitry and Pavel. They had been working together for over 10 years and had never been caught. They were smart, ruthless, and completely dedicated to completing their missions. They will be in the tallest building, Victor explained. They always take the position with the best overall view. From there, they can see the other teams and coordinate the attack. Maria studied the area around City Hall. The tallest building was a 6-story bank building on the north side. From the roof, a sniper would have a clear view of the entire plaza and all the surrounding buildings. It was also the most difficult building to approach undetected. The next morning, Maria was in position before dawn. She had spent 3 hours getting into place, moving carefully through a series of buildings to reach a position where she could observe the bank building without being seen. She lay on the roof of a 3-story apartment building, her rifle aimed at the bank's roof access door. She had calculated distance, wind speed, and bullet drop. If the team leaders appeared where Victor said they would, she would have clear shots. Captain Hassan's voice crackled through her earpiece. All teams in position. Governor's motorcade will arrive in 30 minutes. Maria checked her watch. According to the plan, the snipers should start taking their positions soon. She scanned the other buildings around City Hall, looking for any sign of movement. At 9:15 a.m., she saw them. 2 figures appeared on the roof of the bank building, moving quickly but carefully. They were dressed in dark clothing and carried military-style rifles. One of them immediately set up a shooting position facing City Hall. The other took out binoculars and began surveying the area. These had to be Dmitry and Pavel. Maria adjusted her scope and took aim. She could take them both out right now, but that might alert the other teams and cause them to abort or change positions. She needed to wait until all the snipers were in place. Target 1 and Target 2 in position at location Alpha. She whispered into her radio. One by one, Captain Hassan's spotters reported sightings at the other buildings around City Hall. The snipers were taking their positions exactly as Victor had predicted. At 9:45 a.m., all 6 remaining snipers were in place. The trap was set. Governor's motorcade approaching, Captain Hassan reported. 2 minutes out. Maria held her breath. This was the most critical moment. If the snipers suspected anything, they might abort the mission. But if they proceeded with the attack, dozens of people could die. She watched through her scope as Dmitry adjusted his rifle and aimed toward the City Hall entrance. His finger was on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment. The governor's black limousine pulled into the plaza and stopped in front of City Hall. Security guards stepped out first, followed by the governor himself, a tall, gray-haired man in a dark suit. Maria could see Dmitry preparing to fire. In a few seconds, he would pull the trigger, and the governor would be dead. "All teams, execute now!" Maria shouted into her radio. She squeezed her trigger at the same moment. Her bullet struck Dmitry in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his rifle flying across the roof. Before Pavel could react, Maria's second shot hit his leg, dropping him to his knees. Around the plaza, the carefully coordinated assault unfolded. Captain Hassan's teams burst through doors and climbed stairways, reaching the sniper positions within seconds. The sound of gunfire echoed from multiple buildings as the remaining snipers tried to fight or flee. But Maria had planned well. Every escape route was blocked. Every position was surrounded. On the bank roof, Dmitry was trying to crawl toward the access door, leaving a trail of blood behind him. Pavel was attempting to use his radio to warn any teams that might have escaped. Maria rappelled down from her position and crossed the street quickly. She climbed the bank's external fire escape and reached the roof just as Dmitry was pulling out a pistol. "Don't," she warned, pointing her rifle at him. Dmitry looked up at her with hatred in his eyes. "You think this changes anything? There are others. We are just one cell. Kill us all, and they will send more." "Maybe," Maria replied, "but you won't be around to see it." Pavel, still lying on the roof with his wounded leg, laughed bitterly. "You have no idea who you're fighting. We work for people with unlimited resources and no conscience. They will never stop. Then I'll keep stopping them," Maria said simply. Captain Hassan's voice came through her radio. "All targets secured. 4 snipers captured alive, 2 killed resisting arrest. Governor is safe." No civilian casualties. Maria felt a surge of relief. The immediate threat was over, but as she looked down at Dmitry and Pavel, she knew this was just the beginning. Someone with considerable resources and connections had hired these professional killers to terrorize a civilian population. Until she found out who that was, the threat would remain. "You're going to tell me who hired you," she told Dmitry. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually." Dmitry spat blood. "Go to hell." Maria smiled coldly. "I've been there already. It's not as bad as spending life in prison for mass murder." As Captain Hassan's men took the wounded snipers into custody, Maria stood on the roof looking out over the city. For the first time in months, people were walking in the streets without fear. Children were playing in the plaza below. The city was coming back to life. But she knew the celebration would be temporary. Somewhere, the people who had funded this terror campaign were planning their next move. They had invested too much money and effort to give up easily. Maria would need to find them before they could strike again. And she had a feeling that the real enemy was much more dangerous than any sniper. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Dmitry lay in the bed with his arm in a sling, staring at the ceiling. His brother Pavel was in the next bed, his leg elevated in a cast. Both men had been under police guard for 3 days since their capture. Maria entered the room carrying 2 cups of coffee and a folder of documents. She had spent the last 72 hours analyzing everything they had learned from the captured snipers, and she was beginning to see a pattern that disturbed her. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said, setting 1 coffee cup on the table between the beds. "I thought you might want to know what your friends have been telling us." Dmitry turned his head slightly. "We have no friends." "Really?" Maria opened the folder and pulled out several photographs. "Because Victor and Alexei have been very helpful. They've told us about the training facility in Montenegro, the weapons supplier in Bulgaria, the payment system through cryptocurrency exchanges." She laid the photos on Dmitry's bed. They showed a remote compound in the mountains, with shooting ranges and obstacle courses. "This is where you trained, isn't it? All 8 of you, together for 6 months before coming here." Pavel shifted uncomfortably in his bed. "So what? You found our training camp. That doesn't tell you who hired us." Maria sat down in the chair between the beds. "You're right, but it tells me something more interesting. This facility cost millions of dollars to build and operate. The weapons you used cost hundreds of thousands more. The false documents, the safe houses, the encryption equipment. We're talking about at least $10 million invested in this operation." She pulled out another document. $10 million to terrorize a city of 200,000 people. That's a very expensive operation for what appears to be simple terrorism, which means it wasn't simple terrorism at all. Dmitry and Pavel exchanged a look. Maria had seen that look before, the moment when professional criminals realized they had been used. "Let me tell you what I think happened," Maria continued. "Someone hired you to create chaos in this city. They told you it was about destabilizing the government or punishing corruption. But the real purpose was much more specific." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. 3 weeks ago, the regional government announced a major development project. A new port facility that would bring billions of dollars in trade through this region. Multiple international companies submitted bids for the construction contract. Maria turned back to the prisoners. "Guess what happened to those bids while you were shooting people in the streets?" Pavel frowned. "What do you mean?" 4 of the 5 companies withdrew their bids. They cited security concerns and political instability. Only 1 company maintained their bid throughout the crisis. Maria pulled out another document. A company called Meridian Development Corporation, based in Cyprus. She tossed the document onto Dmitry's bed. Meridian Development just won a $20 billion contract because their competitors were scared away by sniper attacks. $20 billion, gentlemen. That's quite a return on a $10 million investment. Dmitry picked up the document with his good hand and read it carefully. His face grew dark as he understood what Maria was telling them. "You're saying we were hired to eliminate business competition?" Pavel asked. "I'm saying you were hired to commit mass murder so that some corporation could win a construction contract," Maria replied. 47 innocent people died so that some executives could get richer." The room fell silent. Maria could see that both men were processing this information. As professional killers, they had convinced themselves they were serving some larger political purpose. Learning that they had actually been corporate assassins was clearly disturbing to them. Even if what you say is true, Dmitri said finally, we still don't know who hired us. Our contact was always through encrypted channels. Maria nodded. That's what I thought. Until yesterday. She pulled out her phone and showed them a photograph. It showed a man in an expensive suit standing next to a black limousine. He was middle-aged with graying hair and cold eyes. Do you recognize him? Maria asked. Both men shook their heads. His name is Markus Volkov. He's the CEO of Meridian Development Corporation. But more importantly, he's the man who visited your training facility in Montenegro 2 months before you came here. Maria showed them another photograph, this one taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed the same man walking through the mountain compound with several other figures. Our intelligence sources have been very helpful, Maria explained. It turns out that Markus Volkov has used hired killers before. 3 years ago, a similar pattern happened in Africa. Mysterious attacks on infrastructure projects. Competitors withdrew from bidding. Meridian Development won a massive contract. Pavel was staring at the photographs with growing anger. This bastard used us. He made us believe we were fighting for a cause. What cause did he tell you you were fighting for? Maria asked. Regional independence. Dmitri replied bitterly. He said corrupt government officials were selling the country to foreign corporations. He said we were fighting to preserve local control of resources. Maria almost laughed. He told you that you were fighting against foreign corporations while working for a foreign corporation. That's quite a story. She sat back down and leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen now. Volkov thinks he's won. He has his contract, and he believes all the witnesses to his scheme are either dead or captured. But he's wrong. What do you mean? Pavel asked. I mean we're going to bring him down. But I need your help to do it. Dmitri shook his head. We're not informants. We don't betray our employers. Your employer betrayed you first, Maria pointed out. He sent you on a mission based on lies, then left you here to take the blame while he profits from your crimes. She pulled out another document. Volkov has already started moving money out of the company accounts. By the time the port project is completed, he'll have transferred most of the profits to personal accounts in non-extradition countries. Then he'll disappear, leaving behind a corporate shell and a trail of dead bodies. Maria could see that the brothers were wavering. Professional pride was warring with growing anger at being manipulated. What exactly are you asking us to do? Pavel asked. I want you to contact your handler. Tell them the mission was successful but that you need extraction. Ask for a meeting to debrief and collect final payment. Dmitri looked skeptical. They'll know we were captured. Too much time has passed without communication. Not necessarily, Maria replied. We've been sending status updates using your encrypted phone. As far as they know, you've been lying low after the successful attack, waiting for things to calm down before requesting extraction. She showed them the phone and the messages that had been sent. The communications team had done excellent work creating believable updates that suggested the snipers were hiding but uncompromised. If we do this, what happens to us? Pavel asked. That depends on how it goes, Maria said honestly. But I can tell you that your cooperation will be noted when sentencing comes. And if we can prove that you were deceived about the true nature of your mission, that could be considered mitigating circumstances. The brothers whispered to each other in Russian for several minutes. Finally, Dmitri looked up. We'll make the contact. But if this goes wrong, if they suspect anything, they won't, Maria assured him. Because we're not going to give them any reason to be suspicious. 2 hours later, Maria sat in the command center watching as Dmitri typed a message into the encrypted phone. The message requested a meeting for debriefing and final payment, suggesting a location outside the city where the risk of detection would be minimal. The response came within an hour. The handler agreed to meet in 3 days at an abandoned warehouse complex about 50 kilometers from the city. The meeting would be at midnight, and only Dmitri and Pavel should attend. Perfect, Maria said. That gives us time to prepare. Captain Hassan looked worried. This is extremely dangerous, Maria. If Volkov's people suspect this is a trap, They might kill the brothers and disappear. They might, Maria agreed. But this is our only chance to get proof that connects Volkov to the murders. Without that proof, he walks away clean and probably does this again in another country. Over the next 3 days, Maria worked with a special operations team to plan the most complex mission of her career. They would need to capture Volkov's representatives alive while gathering evidence of the conspiracy. At the same time, they would need to protect Dmitry and Pavel, who would be in extreme danger. The warehouse complex was ideal for the operation. It consisted of several large buildings connected by open courtyards with only a few access roads. Maria's team could control all the approaches while remaining hidden, but Maria suspected that Volkov's people would be equally careful. They might bring their own security team, or they might choose a different location at the last minute. On the night of the meeting, Maria was in position 2 hours before the scheduled time. She lay on the roof of the main warehouse with a clear view of the entire complex. Her rifle was equipped with night vision scope and silencer. She could see heat signatures of her team members positioned around the perimeter. At 11:30 p.m., headlights appeared on the access road. A black SUV approached slowly, stopping about 100 meters from the designated meeting point. Maria could see figures moving inside the vehicle, but they made no move to get out. At 11:45 p.m., a second vehicle appeared. This one was a white van that parked on the opposite side of the complex. Again, no one got out immediately. "They're being very cautious," Captain Hassan's voice whispered through Maria's earpiece. At exactly midnight, a figure emerged from the white van and walked toward the center of the courtyard. He was carrying a briefcase and wore a long coat. At the same time, Dmitry and Pavel emerged from the main warehouse building and walked toward the meeting point. Maria watched through her scope as the 3 men approached each other. The handler was a thin man with dark hair, probably in his 40s. She had never seen him before, but she photographed his face carefully. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes. Maria could see money being exchanged, presumably final payment for the assassination mission. The handler seemed satisfied with the brothers' report. But just as the meeting appeared to be concluding, everything went wrong. The black SUV's engine roared to life, and the vehicle accelerated toward the meeting point. At the same time, armed figures emerged from the white van, raising weapons. "They're going to kill the brothers," Maria shouted into her radio. "All teams move now." She fired her first shot at the SUV's driver, causing the vehicle to swerve and crash into a concrete barrier. Her second shot dropped one of the gunmen emerging from the van. Gunfire erupted throughout the complex as Maria's team engaged Volkov's security force. Dmitry and Pavel threw themselves behind a concrete pillar as bullets flew around them. The handler with the briefcase was running toward the white van, but Maria had a clear shot. She aimed carefully and fired, hitting him in the leg. He went down hard, the briefcase flying from his hands. "Secure the briefcase," Maria ordered as she changed position on the roof. The battle lasted only a few minutes. Volkov's people were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. 3 were killed and 2 were captured alive, including the wounded handler. As Maria climbed down from the roof, she felt both satisfaction and concern. They had successfully captured Volkov's representative and recovered what appeared to be important evidence. But the fact that Volkov had tried to kill Dmitry and Pavel suggested that he knew more about the situation than Maria had hoped. Captain Hassan met her at the briefcase. Inside, they found detailed financial records showing payments to the sniper team, along with communication logs and operational plans. Most importantly, they found a contract signed by Marcus Volkov personally, authorizing the elimination of competitive threats to regional development projects. "This is it," Maria said, holding up the signed contract. "This is proof that Volkov ordered the murders." But as she studied the documents more carefully, Maria realized that their problems were far from over. The papers showed that Volkov's operation was much larger than they had suspected. There were references to similar projects in other countries, other teams of hired killers, other construction contracts worth billions of dollars. They had caught the man responsible for terrorizing their city, but he was part of an international network of corporate assassins that operated around the world. The captured handler, despite his wound, refused to answer questions. He claimed diplomatic immunity and demanded to contact his embassy. Maria suspected he would be released within days and disappear forever. As dawn broke over the warehouse complex, Maria stood looking at the evidence they had gathered. They had enough to arrest Marcus Volkov, but would they be able to find him? And even if they did, would they be able to prove his guilt in a court of law? The war against the snipers was over, but Maria suspected that her real fight was just beginning. The luxury hotel in Geneva was everything Marcus Volkov had expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and complete privacy for important business meetings. He sat in the presidential suite's living room, looking out at Lake Geneva while his lawyers prepared the final contracts for the port construction project. $20 billion. After expenses and bribes, he would clear at least $8 billion in profit, the best return on investment he had ever achieved. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message. The local team had been eliminated during a payment meeting 2 weeks ago. Police had recovered some documents, but nothing that could directly implicate him. His lawyers assured him that any evidence would be inadmissible in international court. Volkov smiled. He had used similar tactics in 6 different countries over the past decade. A few dozen deaths were a small price to pay for the wealth and power he had accumulated. Governments and competitors learned to stay out of his way. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His head of security, a former Special Forces operator named Klaus, entered the room. "Sir, there's a problem. We've identified the woman who led the operation against our team." Volkov looked up from his contracts. "What kind of problem?" Klaus handed him a tablet displaying a photograph. It showed Maria Santos in military uniform, accepting a medal from a general. Her name is Maria Santos, 12 years military experience, specialized in counterterrorism operations. She's been hired by the local government as a security consultant. Volkov studied the photo carefully. The woman looked competent and dangerous. "Is she still in the country?" "No, sir. Our sources say she left 3 days ago. Destination unknown." Volkov nodded. "Then she's no longer our concern. The contracts are signed, the money is being transferred, and the local authorities have no jurisdiction here." But Klaus looked uncomfortable. "Sir, there's more. We've intercepted communications suggesting that she may be working with international law enforcement. Someone has been asking questions about our operations in Africa and South America." For the first time, Volkov felt a hint of concern. His success depended on operating below the radar of major intelligence services. If someone was connecting his various projects, "What kind of questions?" he asked. "Pattern analysis. Financial investigations. They're looking for connections between infrastructure projects and unexplained violence in multiple countries." Volkov set down the contracts and walked to the window. Below, tourists walked along the lake shore in the afternoon sunshine. None of them had any idea that one of the world's most successful assassins was planning his next operation just meters above them. "Increase security," he told Klaus, "and prepare alternate extraction plans. If this Santos woman is building a case against us, we may need to relocate quickly." Klaus nodded and left the room. Volkov returned to his desk but found it difficult to concentrate on the contracts. Something about this situation felt different from his previous operations. In the past, local authorities had been happy to accept simple explanations for terrorist attacks. A few arrests, some press conferences, and everyone moved on to other concerns. But this Maria Santos seemed to understand the bigger picture. Volkov's phone rang. The caller ID showed his contact at Meridian Development's board of directors. "Marcus, we need to talk," the voice said without preamble. "There are some concerns about the recent project." "What kind of concerns?" Volkov asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Questions are being asked about the timing of the terrorist attacks and our contract award. Some board members are getting nervous." Volkov felt his anger rising. "The board hired me to win contracts. I won the contract. What happens between those 2 points is not their concern. It becomes their concern when international investigators start making inquiries. We need to consider distancing the company from recent events." "You're talking about cutting me loose," Volkov said coldly. "I'm talking about protecting the company. If this situation escalates, we can't afford to be associated with irregular activities." Volkov ended the call without responding. He had expected this reaction. Corporate executives were happy to profit from his methods, but they always panicked when faced with potential consequences. But Volkov had prepared for this possibility. Over the years, he had accumulated detailed records of every board member who had approved his operations. If they tried to abandon him, he would drag them down with him. His secure computer chimed with an incoming message. Volkov opened the encrypted file and found a video message from an unknown sender. The video showed Maria Santos sitting in what appeared to be a government office. She looked directly into the camera as she spoke. "Volkov, I know you're watching this. By now you've probably heard that your operation in our city has been completely dismantled. 8 professional killers captured or killed, along with their handlers and support network." Volkov leaned forward, studying the woman's face. She spoke with quiet confidence, like someone who held all the winning cards. "But that was just the beginning," Maria continued. "We've been analyzing the evidence we recovered, and we've identified a pattern of similar operations in 12 different countries over the past decades. Infrastructure projects worth over $200 billion, all awarded to companies connected to you after unexplained terrorist attacks eliminated the competition." The video showed documents and photographs, evidence that Volkov thought had been destroyed years ago. How had she obtained this information? "We've also identified your financial networks," Maria said. "Shell companies in Cyprus, money transfers through Lebanon, arms purchases from Eastern European suppliers. We know how you recruit your teams, how you train them, and how you deploy them." Volkov felt ice in his stomach. This level of investigation required resources far beyond what a local government could provide. Maria Santos was working with major intelligence services, probably American, British, or both. The video continued. "Right now, you're probably thinking about running. New identity, new location, maybe a nice retirement in a non-extradition country. But that won't work this time, because we know where you are." The camera zoomed in on Maria's face. "Hotel Beau Rivage, Geneva. Presidential suite. You arrived 3 days ago for meetings with your corporate partners. Partners who, by the way, are already cooperating with our investigation." Volkov jumped up from his desk and ran to the window. On the street below, he could see black vehicles positioned at strategic points around the hotel. As he watched, more vehicles arrived and armed figures took positions. "You have 30 minutes to surrender," Maria's voice continued from the computer. "After that, we come up to get you. I should mention that Swiss authorities have been very cooperative. They're as interested as we are in stopping your activities." Volkov slammed the laptop shut and grabbed his phone to call Klaus. The call went directly to voicemail. He tried his pilot, his financial manager, his lawyers. No one answered. They had all abandoned him. Volkov opened his safe and pulled out an emergency bag containing cash, false documents, and weapons. He had planned for this scenario many times, but he had never expected it to happen so quickly or completely. A knock at the door made him freeze. "Mr. Volkov, this is Swiss Federal Police. We have a warrant for your arrest. Please open the door." Volkov looked around the suite desperately. There was a balcony overlooking the lake, but it was 6 stories down. There was a service elevator, but it would be watched. There was nowhere to run. Another knock, more insistent this time. "Mr. Volkov, if you don't open the door in 60 seconds, we will enter by force." Volkov walked to his desk and sat down heavily. For 15 years, he had been the predator. He had planned and executed the deaths of hundreds of people in pursuit of corporate profits. He had thought himself untouchable. But Maria Santos had proven him wrong. She had done something no one had ever managed before. She had connected all his operations and built an airtight case against him. The door exploded inward as Swiss tactical officers entered the suite. Volkov raised his hands slowly, showing that he was unarmed. "Markus Volkov," the lead officer said in accented English. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, international terrorism, and organized crime." As the officers placed handcuffs on his wrists, Volkov saw Maria Santos enter the room behind them. She was smaller than he had expected, but her eyes held the cold determination of someone who had seen too much violence. "You destroyed my business," Volkov said as they led him toward the door. "Your business was destroying people's lives," Maria replied. "I just stopped you from destroying any more. Others will take my place. There's too much money involved for this to end with my arrest." Maria nodded. Probably, but they'll have to work much harder now. And they'll know that someone is watching. As they waited for the elevator, Volkov tried one last manipulation. You realize that my conviction will destabilize multiple infrastructure projects around the world? Thousands of legitimate jobs will be lost because of your investigation. Thousands of people will also stay alive, Maria replied simply. I think that's a fair trade. The elevator descended in silence. Volkov stared at his reflection in the polished steel doors, seeing for the first time not a successful businessman, but a common criminal who had finally been caught. 6 months later, Maria stood in the courtroom in Geneva as the judge read Markus Volkov's sentence, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. His corporate partners had received sentences ranging from 10 to 25 years. The investigation had uncovered a network of corruption and violence spanning 12 countries and involving dozens of government officials and business leaders. It would take years to unravel all the connections, but the major players were now behind bars. Captain Hassan, who had flown to Geneva for the trial, joined Maria outside the courthouse. How does it feel to have stopped one of the world's most successful corporate assassins? He asked. Maria looked up at the clear sky above Geneva. It feels like a good start, she said. But Volkov was right about one thing. Others will try to take his place. And you'll be ready for them? Maria smiled. I'll be ready. She had learned something important during the hunt for Volkov's network. Traditional law enforcement was not equipped to handle global criminal operations that used terrorism as a business tool. But specialized teams with the right resources and international cooperation could make a difference. 3 governments had already approached Maria about forming a permanent international unit dedicated to investigating corporate-sponsored violence. The unit would have authority to cross borders, access classified intelligence, and coordinate with military forces when necessary. It would be dangerous work. The people they hunted would be well-funded, highly trained, and completely ruthless. But Maria had spent her career hunting dangerous people, and she was very good at it. As she walked away from the courthouse, Maria's phone buzzed with a message from an encrypted number. The message contained a single photograph showing a construction site in South America where unexplained attacks had recently begun targeting competing contractors. Maria studied the photo carefully. The pattern was already familiar. Isolated location, high-value infrastructure project, systematic elimination of business competition through violence. Someone was already trying to fill the vacuum left by Volkov's arrest. Maria deleted the message and headed for the airport. Her flight to Sao Paulo left in 3 hours. She had work to do. The war against corporate assassins was far from over, but Maria Santos had proven that these criminals were not untouchable. They could be hunted, captured, and brought to justice. And she intended to hunt every last one of them. The snipers who had terrorized her city were dead or imprisoned. Their employer was spending the rest of his life behind bars. The network that had funded their operation was dismantled. But somewhere in the world, other cities were facing similar threats. Other innocent people were dying for corporate profits. Other criminals thought they were beyond the reach of justice. They were wrong. Maria Santos was coming for them, and she would not stop until every last one had been eliminated.